Hey everyone, if you're just tuning in, I'm just getting started here. I'm hoping this will work. Okay. Okay, a couple more clicks. Okay. Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you're there, let me know. I think it's working. Okay. Yay. I'm just going to check a couple things, then we're going to dive into a super fun topic. It's been a very busy summer, so I'm excited about this topic. Okay. I'm just going to do a quick comment at everyone. We are live. Okay, bear with me here. All right. Okay, I'm going to pin this. Okay. If you can see me and hear me, let me know. It's always helpful to know that people are out there, that everything's working, like my audio and all that good stuff, because I can not always tell. So if you're here, let me know. Maybe let me know how your summer is going. I see a few people jumping on. Hey, Jonathan. Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. You too. Back at you. I appreciate it. Okay. Yeah, anyone else? Let me know where you're calling in from. Jonathan, I actually thought of you recently because I was talking to someone else in Medina, and I'm like, I wonder if you know another person I know there. So I meant to message you. Hey, Adora. Awesome. Okay. I feel like everyone can see me and hear me. Thank you. I super appreciate that. Okay. And make sure, can you see my my screen sharing too? I'm just going to assume you can. If you can't, let me know. Okay. Okay, we're going to jump in to the topic, and this will be recorded too. So like if you missed the intro, no worries. It will always be a replay available. So, all right, we're going to just dive in here. Thanks for your patience. And as you're tuning in, yeah, just let me know where you're calling in from. If you have any questions, we'll have lots of time for Q&A. I'm going to go into full screen mode. So hold on. Actually, maybe I'm not. Okay, we're just going to leave it like this because I feel like I'll screw something up and then this will disappear. Dora, you're saying summer's going well and MTRs are fully booked for the moment. Yeah, it's been like a blazing summer. I think it's been the busiest summer I've had in a long time. So hoping to share some tips for everyone else. So today, there might be some lag, but today, hopefully you guys can see I'm just going to make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing here. So you're not wondering what I'm talking about. Okay. Okay, yeah. So the topic tonight is maximizing your midterm rental profits, tapping into relocation demand. It's a really nuanced topic. We're just going to kind of go really high level, but if you haven't come across it, I'll unpack it a little bit and kind of explain it more. So first of all, just a little bit about me. If you haven't come across me, you probably heard me say this before, but just quickly, just so you know a little bit of context about me. I like to say I was raised by capitalist hippies. I helped run the family vacation rental business in Northern California. This was like pre-Airbnb. It was like answering machines and paper calendars. And then I got into real estate way back in 2005. I've been a landlord ever since. Used to be really private about it. Now I kind of shout it from the rooftops because I love real estate. It's a little bit about me. And then prior to doing this, I owned a creative agency with my husband. I'm forever an outside cat, as someone once put it. It's a very apt way to put it. I went from this being kind of a side thing to full-time investor. I'm pretty much a serial entrepreneur. I'm the host of the She's Got Assets podcast. Be sure to check that out, subscribe. That'd be awesome. I'm the course author of the REI playbook and MTR playbook. And then we have Cedar and Porch properties and Shona Buys houses. And we own a mix of long-term and mid-term rentals in Portland, Oregon. And I'm obsessed with real estate. So that's a little bit about me, just for some context. And as you guys are joining, please just say hi. Let me know if any of this is resonating with you. I'll start sharing some tips soon. So midterm rentals, probably, if you're here, you probably know what they are, but just so we're all on the same page. It's It's a 30 plus day stay in a fully furnished property. So it's kind of like an Airbnb without the constant turnover. If anyone can relate to that, let me know. It's not for me. I like a couple month bookings. That's really awesome. And the great cash flow. So midterm rental benefits, really high level, 2 to 3 extra cash flow, only a couple turnovers a year versus every other night, or every couple nights. I really believe it's providing a needed service, right? A home away from home, all the comforts of home. And I think you just get a lot more freedom from your investment, right? You're getting maximum cash flow. You're not dealing with guests on vacation that are really high maintenance. And just with that being said, I get this a lot, like what type of property makes a good midterm, and specifically for the topic of insurance, there are certain properties that are definitely more geared towards displaced families, but really high level, right? We have everything from a studio and a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, right? The typical travelers are, everyone talks about traveling nurses. There's actually a lot more guests than that, but there are traveling nurses. I see a lot of digital nomads, business travelers, corporate travelers, right? That's usually like 1 to 2 bedroom. And we really get into the insurance claims for displaced families. It's typically a three bedroom plus 2 bath home, right? That's really the kind of property that a family is looking for. Sometimes 2 bedrooms, sometimes even 1 bedroom. I'd say that's kind of rare, but typically they're looking for at least a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, if not bigger, right? So that's really the kind of property that we're going to talk about today for the model for displaced families for insurance claims. So we're going to dive into that, and it's pretty high level. I do have a workshop coming up, so if you want more information on this, be sure to check that out, and I will mention that too. But essentially, insurance, they can pay a premium, right? When a family, basically there's a couple different players in the insurance space, right? And it's a really big business, right? And people are paying through their insurance monthly, right, for this feature of getting temporary housing if they've been displaced, right, due to like a fire or flood in their home or something like that, right? So there's a lot of claims constantly. The thing is, we can't predict them. We don't know when they're going to come, but they're pretty consistent, and you get them consistently if you kind of know how to optimize your listing and know how to market for it, right? So what I'm going to cover here is really high level, that kind of 7 steps for getting a midterm insurance contract. Again, we can't predict them. We can optimize them. We can make sure we have the right kind of properties. We can make sure we're in the right places to get found. So what happens is really high level, right? Most of the claims that I see, I'm in Portland, Oregon, and kind of the Northwest, are water damage. It's like the dishwasher leaked, if a toilet overflowed. I talk to families all the time, and they just have they're either staying in a hotel with their kids. It's not comfortable, right? But typically something happens like fire, flood, something like that. They typically will file a claim. Sometimes they get put in a hotel temporarily, not always. Every case is a little bit different, right? It's never cookie cutter, right? So oftentimes sometimes they're waiting for rehab to start a restoration. So typically they'll file a claim and they'll be put in a hotel typically, and then they're going to start working with a housing specialist. Some of the big ones are like ALE Solutions, CRS, right? And they're going to be paired with a relocation specialist as kind of the middle person, right? And they might reach out to you, and they might find you if you're in the right places, and you let them know that you understand the model. They're usually really happy to hear that, because I work with a lot of landlords that don't understand, hey, they're just going to book for like a month or 2 or a shorter stay, right? So you connect with the relocation specialist. Again, I'm not minimizing this process. It's pretty complicated, but very high level, right? And then you submit what's called a proposal. They'll ask you a bunch of questions. And then after that, they're going to submit that to the insurance adjuster. And sometimes there's some back and forth. There's a bit of negotiation, and the family moves in. Like, this is very high level, right? What happens with insurance. But it's good to understand the process and why we're kind of charging a premium. For the flexible lease terms, they're often starting out with like a month or 2, and they need the option to extend. And there's just a lot of admin involved in this process, right? So it's good to understand this. Even the families have never been through it, so they often don't understand the process. So there's different types of insurance claims, right? Sometimes it could be a natural catastrophe. Like, we've had some crazy storms in the past in Portland, Oregon, right? A tree fell on a house. And these are the type of messages you're going to get, right? We had a tree fall on our house and looking for a fully furnished short-term rental. Looking forward to talking with you. And they're not always going to tell you, hey, this is an insurance claim, but if you kind of looking for these keywords, like something happened to their home, we're having work done in our house, the first thing I do is always ask, hey, is this a claim? And the reason I'm asking that is because I want to know, like, hey, are we dealing with temporary housing here? Are we dealing with insurance? It's just good to know the parties involved. So I'm always going to I'm kind of always on that, keeping an eye out for when I get these messages, what they're looking for. That way I can kind of help them better, if that makes sense. And then there's like man-made catastrophes, again, a pipe burst, water damage. I work a lot with the restoration company, right? Sometimes you'll get a direct message, right, from one of these companies if you put yourself in their databases. So like this one says, we're looking for a 6-month lease with option to extend month to month following the initial term. And they'll usually give you like the family members, the dogs, the pets, right? Sometimes we get interesting pets, lizards, chickens, lots of animals. So just be open and know that they are a family and they typically have pets because they are not renters, right? So they don't have restrictions on how many pets they can have. So just be aware of that. It's really important to be pet friendly. Here's some other example inquiries just so you kind of know what the range is, right? You don't always get the budget. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It's always good to ask. So when you submit, you kind of know that you're kind of in line with what they're approved for. They don't always have it. Sometimes it's just submitting and using your best guess, right? But here's some examples. It will also take unfurnished properties. It's not super common. We're not charging a premium for unfurnished, that we are charging for that flexibility of, less than a year lease, right? So here they're saying unfurnished is 4,200, furnished 6,200. Again, it's not super common to get your budgets like this, but it's good to know. This one is like 9K. This was an Airbnb trip. The total was like almost 30K, right? So there's a really big range depending on length of stay, the size of the property. I will say the larger properties are definitely going to command the higher rates, or harder to find, right? So it's just some examples. And then like, how much does insurance pay? Like there's no cookie cutter, right? But typically it's coming from the coverage D, loss of use coverage, also known as ALE insurance, right? And so I will always ask the family, I'll even ask to look at their policy. You can like run it through ChatGPT to kind of figure out what's their annual budget. We don't always know this. Sometimes we're just using our best guess, right? But it is important to understand what's paying for their housing, right? So coverage D also covers other things, restaurant meals, storage, temporary housing, right? It's not just housing, but that's the bulk of it, right? So it's good to understand where it's coming from. And again, there's no hard and fast rule, right? We're typically at least 2x or more long-term, right? But it really depends on length of stay, type of property it is, the neighborhood, how, what their policy will, they're approved for. Again, we need to be mindful of that. We want to make sure that we're submitting something that they can have a few extensions. I'm going pretty high level here, so hopefully this makes sense, but it's a bit nuanced. You really want to ask them. Usually the temporary housing company will have an idea of what they're approved for. So when we're submitting, we're trying to stay within that range. And also, right, if they're approved for 6 months, we're going to give them a little bit better deal versus, hey, they're staying for a month and they may or may not extend, right? So there's a lot of nuance to it. Again, loss of use coverage, right? It's typically 20 to 25% of the dwelling value. Again, this always varies. This is not a blanket statement, but just so you understand, like if they're coming from a certain neighborhood, they have a 4-bedroom home, you can do some like quick math, right? But it's always going to be different. Right. So if the dwelling was 400K, around 20%, right, is 80K, divided by 12 is about 7K a month. We never want to be at the top of their budget, but it's just good kind of napkin math to understand. Again, ideally, we're asking for their policy or asking what their budget is, just so we really are submitting something that's going to be approved, right? That's the goal. So some really high level tips. It's a family, right? They often have kids in school, or they're looking for somewhere convenient for work. So it should be, 5 to 10 miles from the home that was damaged. They're also typically keeping an eye on the remodel. Right. They're kind of overseeing it. Although I've had families travel quite a bit, right? So I have a family right now. We're in North Portland. They're coming from a totally different part of town. Often they're willing to travel for the right property, but in general, it should be a comparable home. You want to be prep friendly. You want to make sure your calendar is open. Ideally, your home is somewhat accessible, like, single level, no stairs, primary in the ground floor. Again, these are all perfect scenarios. And they're also typically going to say ASAP doesn't mean they're going to move in tomorrow. It just means like how there is a process, right? So it may not be available for a week. Don't be like, oh, it's not available. Just say, yes, it's available when it is. And there's always a process to get approval. And it's a lot of back and forth. So they're always going to say ASAP. That does not typically, I have moved very quickly and gotten someone in like next day, but that's kind of when the stars align, to be honest. So, how do you get these leads, right? Well, there's ways to optimize your listing. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And we also want to be on their databases, right? These are the top ones in the course. I have a whole list, but you can use ChatGPT, or you can Google it too for doing it on your own. Like ALE Solutions, CRS, Sedgwick. These are all like some of the bigger, and sometimes they've merged and changed names, that we're just looking for temporary housing agencies, and they partner with insurance to provide temporary housing, right? So we want to be in their databases, and they're often always looking on some of the other places too. So they typically, I get a lot of leads through Furnished Finder, Airbnb, Zillow, Verbo. So I would say these are like the top places to be, because they will often look there, but you always want to make sure you're actually also in their databases and you're optimizing your listing as well. Okay, so optimizing a listing, right? We just want to let them know, hey, we offer flexible lease terms, fully furnished, temporary housing, extended stays, like that kind of, those kind of keywords. We really want to make sure that we're putting that in our listing to let, again, like temporary housing people know, families know, because a lot of times they're going out in Zillow, they're contacting some grumpy landlord that just wants a 12-month lease, doesn't understand the model, right? So the more we can kind of optimize our listings to appeal to these types of inquiries, the better, and they'll really start coming in. So then we kind of, when someone reaches out, they're going to ask for a lot of questions. Again, I have a full proposal in the course, but they're going to ask about when it's available, furnished, unfurnished, lease terms, right? We're typically doing tiered pricing. There's extra fees like application fee, security deposit. I will say a really good tip on the security deposit is I typically for insurance will make that like usually like $2,000 or less, right? Because it's coming typically out of the family's pocket. So they, and that's an unexpected expense. Sometimes insurance will cover it, but typically it's coming out of the family's pocket, and they've maybe had to front some remodeling costs and things like that. And they were not planning on having to rent a home. So be really mindful of that. I make your deposit lower. It's also more likely to get approved. So they'll ask you the questions. I have a proposal in the course, but they'll basically ask you stuff. And if you don't take a screenshot of this, right, they're going to ask you what all your fees are. You send that over typically via email. So that's like pretty, high level how the process works. If anyone wants to learn more, I am doing a live, like really hands-on workshop, how to optimize your listings, how to get found by insurance, where to list, how to list, kind of branding and marketing 101. It's going to be live, so we'll have lots of time for Q&A and, actual getting hands-on stuff done. So if anyone is interested in that, just let me know. That is coming up. And I have, I'll put the link in the chat for anyone that's interested. I'm going to actually stop sharing right now. But if you guys have any questions, I felt like I went a little fast, but that's really high level. There's a lot that goes into it. And if you haven't done an insurance claim before, I think a lot of people, it can be a little confusing, and sometimes you don't hear back, but just know that it's a process. So I'm going to remove, there we go. I'm going to remove that from the screen. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, and first and foremost, like we're really helping out families, right? I think that's really important to keep in mind, doing a lot of education. So let me put a link to that workshop if anyone is interested, and then I will check for Q&A. Let's see. Okay, here we go. All right. I'm going to put this right here. Workshop. Okay. All right. And Dora says, love midterm versus, yes. I'm curious, what is your favorite thing? And I have my reasons, but I'm always curious to hear other people's reasons why I love midterm over short term. If you want to chime in. But in general, right, I think it's definitely more on midterms are more, they're more popular now, but you're getting someone for like a couple months. Typically there's no turnover. They're pretty self-sufficient. We're not restocking constantly. We're not answering questions. They're not on vacation. They're really self-sufficient. So, okay. And Dora's, how I'm setting up lease agreements with them. So it's very nuanced. If it's coming from like ALE, CRS, one of those really big agencies, they typically, you are actually they're paying for it, like insurance is reimbursing them. We're actually putting I like to call them guest versus tenant. The guest names on the lease. I'm running a background, credit, and criminal on them, but I am not, it's kind of a lighter screening because they're not going to have landlord references, right? So they're on the lease, and oftentimes less work, right? Um, yeah, you saying a different guest avatar from STR, like 100%. So oftentimes, the like ALE or CRS, they'll actually ask to see your lease paperwork. So you just draft it and you send it to them. And I think they just want to make sure that there's nothing crazy in it, any crazy clauses, but you will send it to them and then you'll send it to the guests if they're approved to sign it. The other way to go is sometimes there's third parties and they're actually, it's kind of, their name is on it and it's usually like a business name, and then you put authorized guests, so you're actually, they're leasing it, they're kind of subleasing it, right? So it just depends on who's booking it, but typically it's actually the guest's name and they are actually financially responsible even though insurance is paying, which is why I do background credit and criminal checks, because insurance can run out. It's not, it's not typical, but it's just kind of best practice to make sure who's in your property, right? So I typically, it's the tenant's name on there. Yeah, I do a background check, and it's again, it's pretty light. It's just background credit and criminal to make sure, but I mean, I don't want someone in my property that has a criminal record, right? And again, when I run these, it's fine, but I do want to know who's in the property. And I explain to them, hey, this is the process. And it's a little bit foreign as homeowners to be doing an application, but typically they're fine with it. Again, I'm not checking landlord references because they don't have that, they're homeowners. And I'm not asking for pay stubs, right? Because insurance is covering it. It's more just the background and the criminal, just making sure everything's kosher there. Typically any adult, right? I'm running that not on kids, anyone over 18. Dora, you're saying with the construction company was paying for the employee. Yeah, in that case, that's different, right? I would definitely want to vet any like B2B company, like look them Dun and Bradstreet, just do a quick search, make sure they're a reputable company, right? And make sure that the tenants are on there as authorized guests. Like it's a little bit nuanced with court. That's like a more of a corporate lease, right? So it just depends. Make sure they're reputable, and if you can screen the guests, sometimes you can't, and you just kind of have to use your best judgment and do your due diligence on them, right? Make sure they're a good company, get their tax ID and all that stuff. So yeah, good questions. I'm going to mispronounce this, Shadima. Sorry, please correct me. What are some good furniture home goods stores? So my goal is to make it nice and stylish and comfortable. I typically, what I'll do is I'll shop maybe for furniture locally, but although I order most things online, like my go-to, like it's not really original, is Amazon, right? I get my mattress there, I get my bed frames there. Mostly it comes in a box and just plan for like assembling for a couple days. But we're looking for quality and style. It doesn't have to be high end, right? We do want it to look nice. So I'm typically going to Amazon if I'm furnishing quickly. Like there's been times where I run what I call my A/B test, and I often rent places out before they're furnished. So I will do some shopping locally. Like I might find a couch and a coffee table, like Facebook Marketplace, or I've used OfferUp recently. So it just depends on your timeline, right? But I would say like Wayfair, Amazon, and Amazon, the quality is decent. I've ordered chairs from there, coffee tables, bed frames, pretty much you name it. The only time is like when you're super crunched for time and you're like, you have to shop locally for some of the bigger stuff. Yeah, Wayfair is awesome. But I typically I have a whole list in the course of like, it's, just think of, you need a bedroom, you need a mattress cover, mattress encasement, right? Pillow covers, all that kind of stuff. I used to shop locally and go hunting around like, oh, I'll get stuff at Goodwill. And it just ends up being like a goose chase. And it's just go order sets of like everything online. It's a lot more efficient. Yeah, that's what I can say about furnishing, right? It just depends on how thrifty you are, right? You might want to hire someone to do it. I personally do it myself. I think it's kind of fun. I enjoy that process. So yeah. But Facebook Marketplace, yeah, the Facebook Marketplace, if anyone's tried OfferUp, and here's another tip I'll say with furniture, even if you're like the other tip, I would say consignment shops are a great spot for furniture. So a couple years ago, I bought a couch. It was actually for staging a flip, and I was like, how am I going to get it home? And I didn't want to, it's just a whole thing. So there's actually an app called Lug, Lugg. I'll put it in the chat, and it's like kind of like Uber for furniture, if that makes sense. They will pick up stuff and you schedule it on the app, and it's super convenient. And if you don't have a local mover, I don't know where they all are, but it's really great for having stuff moved around. So yeah, Walmart's great too, but Lug is if you like, I've even gotten stuff on like Offer Up, and I scheduled the pickup with Lug, right? Because I didn't want to deal with it or have my husband like haul stuff around because he was busy, right? So lots of ways. I just, be intentional. It should be nice with couches. For one tip too is I tend to I cover them. So even if it's a nice couch, I put kind of I hate to say it, but an ugly couch cover on it. It just protects from the pet hair, protects it from scratching. Yeah. Is it expensive? A lot? No, it's not. So what you do is you put in like, it's just like an app, right? Like using Lyft, you put in your location, it'll auto pick it up. And then you say like how many people, and if it's a couch, you use your best judgment, right? And it will just give you a quote. And it's the convenience is like, because I've had to rent a van, and the time it takes to go rent a van, to load it up or ask a friend or ask your husband, it's just, and the aggravation of loading it up. It was reasonable. I have used independent movers, but the convenience of just being in a store and being like, I want to, like my first time I used it, I was in this consignment shop and I needed to get it delivered. And I'm just like, they're like, use Lug. I'm like, okay, I tried it. And literally like 2 hours later, I had a couch delivered. It was super seamless. I want to say, I wonder if I could log. Let me see if I can log. Yeah, I'll see if I can log in and see. I think it was like maybe one something. Like it wasn't crazy cheap, but the convenience was really good. I'll try and sign in because I don't honestly remember anything else. Yeah, let's see if I can log in here. And it's probably different on different markets, and it's basically kind of like a gig thing. I think a lot of movers do it kind of on the side, right? So ideally you have a friend or someone that can help you, but if you're doing something really last minute, it's really convenient to have stuff like that delivered. Just trying to log in here. And the other thing with furnishing, right? And I teach students all the time, you can totally furnish or get a place rented without actually being furnished. If you forget like a microwave or something, your guests will let you know. Like you definitely want to be really thoughtful, but if you miss something, you can just have it delivered via same day service, right? Like, so just don't, get it as good as you can. And if you forget something or you're missing something, just let your guests know, hey, and I think it shows a lot of goodwill when you go ahead and like have something delivered. Like I've had a microwave delivered, or I'm trying to think of what else, like just other random things that I like forgot, right? Or that were missing. Things don't usually go missing, but sometimes they do. And it's like, no problem. We just have that. I think it was like cutting boards recently. So yeah, let's see. Let me just logging into my Lug here and see what I can give you a more definite answer on that. Okay, my last trip was June 1st. I've only done 2 Lug trips. But okay, so here's the couch. The total price was $143, right? I think I bought the couch for a couple hundred. So it was totally worth it, right? Because even if you rent a van and your time and they loaded it up and they brought it into the next property, it was like well worth it. So I think it's probably different again in every market, but it was yeah, like a 3.08 a mile, it looks like, and there's like a small booking fee. So yeah, well worth it. Any other questions? Yeah, that's great. A checklist is super important. We have that in the course too. Yeah, and if anyone's interested more in insurance, we're doing that. I'm doing that workshop. It's really hands-on because there's a lot that goes into it, and it definitely works. I get like so many insurance leads, and there's a lot of strategy behind it. So if you're interested, or if you have questions, like feel free to hit me up, and I'll drop that link in here again. If you're interested in more hands-on coaching, that's what I do. I work with students all the time. We kind of have all this stuff in a course. I kind of give you the recipe, right, to get your midterm up and running, or maybe you just need to optimize it. Yeah, and Doris says we recently purchased a leather couch for $200 and paid $100. Yeah, no, and I love leather couches. I did, but I do even put covers on them, or you can get like a throw blanket because the pet hair and sometimes I think I had some like slight scratches from like a cat or a dog or something. So I do like to cover them. I take pictures without the cover, but then I love the ugly furniture protectors. It's kind of like the mattress encasement, right? It's just a best practice thing. So Shidimius, I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing your name. Do you units? So here's the thing. I don't rent. You're asking about, do I rent units completely unfurnished? Here's my 2 cents on that, right? It's a great question. You can do midterm with unfurnished. I personally, here's what you can't charge a premium, right? Because part of their premium is fully furnished. I also don't really want someone banging furniture in and out of my properties, right? Because that's like just a lot more wear and tear. I will say, if you have an unfurnished property, you can put it out there and see if you can rent it furnished, unfurnished. And they do work like, so the temporary housing companies like AOE and Sedgwick. And a couple of years ago, there was a big kind of hubbub about them looking to rent more unfurnished. That kind of went away. And I think they do get a kickback, but I personally I want the premium. I also kind of want to make sure that it's up to my standards, right? Like I have a certain style and certain quality. But they will rent unfurnished. In the course, I teach you how to, like, if you have an unfurnished rental, you can virtually stage it. I talk about that in the course, and then put it out there as an option, and then you furnish it quickly, right? But I personally like to have, you're not charging a premium for an unfurnished property. You're charging a premium for kind of flexible lease terms, right? Just like with rentals, month to month is more expensive than a 12-month lease, right? So yes, they do rent unfurnished. Most of the inquiries I get are looking, no, they'll ask you if it's furnished, and they can do it very quickly. But I personally kind of want to manage that. So that's my 2 cents, but great question. Any other questions? Through comments here. Yeah. Let's see. I just lost my place here. Where am I? Yeah, I can't see that for whatever reason. When I'm live, I can't see all the comments. So if I missed you, let me know. It's not showing them to me. Okay. But yeah, no, great questions. If you guys are watching the replay, be sure to chime in if you're interested in the course or the workshop I'm holding. I really go into a lot of depth on this. You get instant access to like the furnishing list, the checklist, like all the stuff, all my go-to items, my exact marketing checklist of where I market, kind of the copy that I'm using, lots of examples, an MTR calculator, lots of things like that. And then you get a bonus one-on-one call with me too. So yeah. All right. I don't see any other questions. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I know I've been kind of off the grid a little bit, kind of summer schedule. I was traveling, but I plan on doing these kind of the regular Tuesday night. And again, if you're interested in coaching or learning more or have questions, I always feel to drop them in the box here, and I will get back to you. But yeah, I don't see any other questions. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, if you're interested in the workshop that I'm doing, we're going to do a really big deep dive in how to optimize your listings, where and how to list, how to furnish, how to brand and market, all that good stuff. There's a lot of nuance to it. And I definitely, when you understand that, it's a real big unlock into getting the kind of leads that we all hear about for insurance claims. So, and it's been very busy. So if you're not booked, like, let me know. And Doris, what platform? It really varies. I've been getting a lot more direct bookings, and you do not need to have a website, right? I don't want that to scare anyone, but I think because I have been really kind of putting myself out there and positioning myself, but I would say I get a lot of leads from Furnish Finder, Airbnb, and Zillow. Those to me are the top three. I'd say probably Furnish Finder, Airbnb, Zillow, and the level of leads. And then I get a lot of direct leads, right? Because I've positioned myself in the right databases and I've built relationships. So, Furnish Finder is one of those sites not everyone loves. But I do get a lot of leads, and insurance will look in those places as well as their databases. So we want to be positioned on them in the right way, right? It's important how you're doing your listing, how you position it, right? It's not vacation. And there's a lot of nuance to that too. Your calendar management, right? If you're doing the hybrid strategy and you're peppered with bookings, if you're trying to get midterm and short term on one listing, right? You're not going to show up in search results because you've got your calendar peppered with listings. So for example, if say you've got a couple weekends booked, your calendar is just you will not show up in search results in Airbnb, right? We talk about that in the course and how to do like a duplicate listing strategy, right? So you have one for short term, then one for midterm, so that you're getting found and you're kind of optimizing your listings for that. So it's a lot of nuance like that. A great question. Yeah. Anything else? Any last questions? I'm going to check the other platform really fast just to see if there's any other questions. Oh, awesome. It looks like someone on YouTube. Emmanuel, thank you for joining me. I always forget I'm streaming everywhere. But yeah, again, thanks for tuning in. Andora, you're asking how often you get insurance. So I get them quite frequently, and that's really a matter of positioning, right? Anytime I get an insurance lead, I'm like, hey, I'm in the Portland, Oregon area, whatever area you're in. I say, please look at me as a resource. I'd love to help you out. And if I have a lead, I'm always going to try and help them out, right? If I get an inquiry and I don't have a vacancy, you probably see me posting a lot, right? So that goes for everyone. We're part of a network here. Leave your listings up, leave them open. And if you get an inquiry that you can't fill or it doesn't work out with your calendar, then just reach out to the network, right? And see if anyone else can help fill it. That really helps build relationships. And your goal is to position yourself as like, hey, the go-to person, whatever area you're in. I do direct mail campaigns, things like that. Yeah, Airbnb is changing. And I think ultimately, right, the biggest takeaway is platforms are always going to change. They're always very pro guest. So the best thing to do is really work on direct bookings, right? Like, you can go as far as building a Boostly website, which is great, but there's a lot of things you can do that we're going to cover in this marketing workshop of how to position yourself so you're getting more direct bookings and you're not relying on platforms, right? We always want to have like an omnipresent marketing strategy, but I think you really want to position yourself to get direct. And when I say direct bookings, that means they're coming directly to you, or you're getting them off platform. You're not relying on Airbnb changing their algorithms or what their whole, they've done a lot of stuff with their experiences, right? Which I think is a lot of liability. So it's important to kind of position yourself, to brand yourself. And there's ways to do it without building a website, right? Just to, online, having a good online presence and really building relationships so you get more direct bookings. So that's what I would say about Airbnb. All platforms are going to change, right? Or Furnish Finder is like a direct booking site, right? But they're always kind of changing and there's a lot of nuance. So I think the best thing we can do is really position ourselves as temporary housing providers in the areas that we're in. And then we're less at the mercy of the OTAs, right? How's that for, that's my 2 cents. So, I mean, things are always going to change and evolve as they should, right? But I think it's never really in the favor of the host, right? It's always in the guest as far as their policies goes, because that's who they're marketing to. So, all right. Any other questions? Again, I'll drop that link in if anyone is interested in really exploring, getting your listing online, really dialing your marketing. Maybe you have a booking, you're not getting consistent bookings, you're looking for more insurance or just bookings in general. You get like a one-on-one with me. We do like a real audit. I'm walking you through the whole process that I do to get all the leads that I get, and where to list and how to list and all that fun stuff. So I give you my exact recipe. Yeah, someone booked $4, ended up with $6. And that happens. I would say it's bookings. It's less likely that we get extra guests with midterms, but it can happen, right? And that's just part of the game that we're in. But that's kind of why I always, I like direct bookings. I can talk to people. I can do my direct booking process, which includes approval, stuff like that. So, yeah. Yep. All right, you guys, any other questions or comments? Definitely be sure to check out that marketing workshop that I'm doing. If you're interested in coaching, let me know. If you have questions in general or want me to feel free. And the other thing is, post your MTRs. If you're not getting booked, let us know. Let the community know we're nationwide, right? Or if you have a referral, let's leverage the network. That's super important. That's what this group is all about. So awesome. All right. I got to figure out where my screen is to end the live stream. Even know where it is. Okay, here I am. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching the recap or the replay, God, I lost my language for a minute there. Let me know. If you're interested in joining the workshop, just tap the link or hit me up via Messenger. I can answer any questions. And if you can't make the times, there will be a replay and a one-on-one call with me. So it's a great opportunity to really optimize your listings or get your questions answered. So. All right, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. Super appreciate your time on a Tuesday evening. It's summertime. Everyone's busy. So I really appreciate it. It means a lot. So I'm not just talking to myself. Thank you for the engagement. Awesome. All right. I'm going to say goodnight and I will catch you guys later.